Welcome into another edition of the Retro Wrestling Rewind. As always, I am David Fine. My tag team partner, the true Long Island IZ, Alex G. He'll be back on Wednesday when we cover WrestleMania 4. But today I have a very special guest, a man who I met 1 year ago, upcoming in April at WrestleMania, WrestleCon, the great Mac Davis. Man, 1 year ago, can you believe, what were you doing at this moment? Were you anticipating your trip to New York City and WrestleMania and WrestleCon?
I really was, and it's great to be here. Thank you. It's that particular WrestleCon, as you know, there was so much going into that. There was the NWA, there was their run with Cody and Nick, and everything that was happening at that time, along with WrestleMania, just made things at a real amped level at that particular year. And of course, my mind wasn't all there. Yeah, and thank God I had you there, because otherwise I've been in a lot of trouble. Because
we'll definitely tell that story coming. It's a funny story, guys. You'll find it funny. But yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking that I was talking to Bill last night, because he's actually going to maybe appear on the program this weekend, because I finally nailed him down. I was like, you're not really going anywhere. You're not going to. He was supposed to come to Atlanta or to Rome, Georgia, for Superstars of Wrestling, but I think that's most officially probably going to be canceled, or he said he will not travel to that event, even if it's happening. But I mean, I cannot believe 1 year ago we were going to New York. We were walking around, and now New York City is closed down. No wrestling. It's just, and WrestleMania is now 2 days. It's a 2-day event. So I mean, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, it's just weird.
It's one of the strangest things during our lifetime. We've never seen a WrestleMania delayed, much less canceled for the most part. I mean, because all the events that went with WrestleMania, not just the event that you see on pay-per-view, but everything that leads up to that, all their shows prior to, including all the indie shows, ROH, you name them, they're all out there. And they took a heck of a risk. And then when the coronavirus came, it was devastating to a lot of people on many, many different levels. You're not just talking about the wrestling talent, the indie talent. You're not talking about just the promoters and what they may have into it, but you've got the city of Tampa Bay, the money that they're going to lose in this process by WrestleMania not being there is just astronomical. And of course, it rolls down to your hotels, your restaurants. Every bit of that is taking a hit from this coronavirus. So yeah, it's nothing like we've ever seen in our lifetime, I know. And to see New York the way it is now, when you bring up the live cam at Times Square and you look out there, you're like, oh, wow, compared to what you and I saw when we were there.
Yeah, I mean, it was it's one of those things that I hope we never see again. And the thing about WrestleMania, they're not canceling it. It's 2 days. They're pre-taping it, according to some sources. WWE, that's just terrible. If they cancel WrestleMania, WWE is going to lose money. But it's the independent promotions that bank on WrestleMania weekend as their WrestleMania weekend show. They may or may not be able to survive, and the independent wrestlers that are booked that can't do stuff, that can't do shows. It's a sad thing, all together. I mean, other than the fact that people are dying, and I mean that's terrible. But when you go down to wrestling, it's the weekend that people look forward to. And
this is the Super Bowl. I mean, basically what people say about the NFL, and that the Super Bowl is a big money maker for a lot of people, including the NFL. It's one of those times of the year, especially for wrestling in our situation of WrestleMania. There's a lot of money in the month of April, and without April and that income, it hurts a lot of promotions from going forward, and may have to rethink their entire, rest of the years. How many shows can they run? How many can they afford right now? What would the draw be? Because even if we open, people back up saying, go out, be free, go do what you want to do. There's still the economic impact that's going to take a while. that's not going to be immediate. I mean, because people are losing money now; they're losing their jobs. So, with all that in hand, it's not like people are just suddenly going to go right back and fill up, a venue again, because they won't. They're going to be nervous about going. They're going to feel guilty if they take their family to see something, until they know for sure, and that may be next year for all we know.
Yeah, I mean it's a world of hurt for the, and the thing about like independent wrestling. I mean, yeah, independent wrestling may come back, but say a great independent wrestler, they lose their job, their, as I call it, their shoot job, and they can't afford to, to go to to work anymore, take time off from work to go work a show out of town. I mean, it's gonna trickle down. We have not seen it, but we were talking about at the start when we were in New York last year. We went to karaoke with Bill. We had a great time. Had a few drinks. That's a understatement. We went to a pizza joint. We got into a cab, and you look down, and what?
I didn't have my camera. I was missing my video camera that I had been at that point recording every bit of the footage from WrestleCon, and I mean, I had interviews on there that one time only type of interviews that I was just sick to my stomach. I mean, it's just like, I know people have that feeling like you lose your keys or something. It's just that your heart goes boom,
yeah.
It just drops. And that's what happened that night. And of all times too, because you got to remember, a year ago, I was pretty much still am, but I mean, in the world of wrestling, I wasn't active. I had just started getting active again because I'd been out for a while. And so being there with Bill was kind of my reintroduction into kind of getting around and being in the business again. And here it is, the first time, and I
and then
I don't have what I need.
And then I said, Mac, here's an idea. I just came out, but call your whatever credit card.
Before you go there,
okay,
let me mention that it was late. It was late at night when we're talking now. So at this point, everything is closing in New York, believe it or not. A lot of the food places are closing. So I am freaking out at this point because we know that the pizza place we went to is not open anymore.
It's not. No,
I might get to see if I got my bag. Won't be until the morning time.
Okay, so it's not like it was a specialty restaurant. That it's one of none, one of one. It's New York City. There's thousands of pizza joints down side streets, I mean, it's like, I was like, I couldn't even tell you where we were staying, let alone where this pizza joint was. But I'm glad you used their credit card, called the credit card company. They said, hey, this is the last transaction.
But you did that. Yeah. I mean, if it weren't for you mentioning, hey, you used your credit card, right? Yeah. I say, well, then we can find out where we ate, because like you were saying, we had no idea what the pizza place name was. We couldn't remember because there's just millions of them in New York. Without that, I would have been in trouble. I really would have.
It's definitely the one time it was good that you picked up the tab. Most of the time you're like, I mean, if you want to pay for it, that's great. But this is the one time that
Bill's not going to pay for
it. No. But you got to love Bill. But speaking of, wrestling, we're talking about, this is an old school wrestling show. What are your first thoughts, your first memories of, I'd say, NWA Mid-Atlantic growing up? I mean, did you grow up watching wrestling in your house, or did you have like a father or a mother or somebody that took you to the wrestling matches, or did you just watch it on television?
I was one of those kids that quietly watched wrestling in the house. When nobody was around, I'd wrestle with the pillows, jump on the sofas, everything else. But there was no one in my family, even, to this day, that enjoys professional wrestling, just me. But I've always known, I was sitting here not long ago, and I was talking to Bill Apter, who we were talking about earlier. And I told Bill, I said, I just can't figure out, people ask me, what do I do? And I don't know how to answer that question because, I've been in radio and I've been a promoter. I've done a lot of things. And he just quietly said, you're an entertainer. And when he said that, it slapped me in the head, and I realized, that is pretty much what I do now. I've done that since I was a kid. I remember doing that going into grade school during lunchtime and recess, and we would act out, play fights. And, during our time, I'm not exactly sure how old you are, but I'm 56 years old. And stuntmen, when I was growing up, were a big deal.
Hmm.
Stuntmen, wrestlers. You had all those shows about, Smoking the Bandit, the stuntmen shows, which I can't remember what that was called. But there was a lot of things at that time that were based around action and stunts and live action stunts. That always appealed to me. And to be honest with you, I don't think I've ever told anybody this, but I've always, in the back of my mind, I think I always wanted to be a stuntman. I
Yeah.
think that's really what I wanted to do. The only problem was you don't get to act when you're a stunt man. You can only perform and do the stunt, but you don't get to be a part of the acting too, which is a necessary crave of mine. I still like to perform, and it's hard to let that go. Once you perform, it's hard to stop.
Yeah, I mean it's one of those things. I started in wrestling in 1991 as a ring announcer, and it's one of those. It's I consider it kind of like a drug. It's one of those things
Yes.
when you get into it, it is sure as hell hard to quit. I mean, it's just like, I mean, I would have loved to have been back in it, but the wife is like, no, you can't get back in. I cannot quit professional wrestling. It's one of those things that just attaches to you. And once you get into it and you love it and you're good at it and have a fun time, then it's something you cannot shake.
No, and I tried to for nearly 10 years. I at one point had damaged my neck so bad in a match that I had to get out of wrestling, actually performing, which was right at the peak. I mean, I was really starting to peak at this point, and so I was really starting to get a feel for the business, even because when I first started, I was 38 years old. That's a lot older than most people
Yeah.
ever think about starting something like wrestling. But when I did, things just started rolling really fast. And so those 5 years were filled with a lot of on the job training that just started coming around and really starting to kind of sink in about the time I got hurt. But during that time that after I got hurt, my father got sick. And when he got sick, I took care of him until he passed away. So I went through 10 years of being away from it. And I can't tell you how much I missed it while I was gone. I made a comment to my dad at one time, and he hated wrestling. he didn't understand it. He was worried about my safety all the time, and rightfully so. I mean, he's a parent, and you worry about
Yeah.
those things. But he just never understood professional wrestling. As he got towards his final days and really getting sick, he had mentioned to me I was talking about something about wrestling, and he tapped me on the hand and he just looked at me and just straight on looked at me and said, "Go back and enjoy it," because he knew I was missing it. And it wasn't much longer after that he had passed away, and that was something that. So I made it a point of coming back. That's the reason I got back into wrestling. Really, was because, excuse me, I'm sorry, but I got back into wrestling because it was a goal. I wanted to get out of that depression of taking care of my father and get back into something that I really loved and wanted to do. And even at 56, I still want to be a part of this industry, and that's the reason I'm going pedal to the metal, trying to make things happen now at my age because time clicks away, but the dreams don't. So you still want to reach for them as much as you can.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely one of those things I'm trying to, to make things happen. You gotta do it. It's kind of like a DIY. You got to do it yourself. No one's going to help you. I mean, there'll be people that help you, but speaking of that, I mean, you have a lot of projects on the table. What are the current projects that you're working on that people would probably love to know about?
Well, we got several, and I always kind of say this is all under the Actor Chat umbrella because Bill has been my mentor for this. I had 30 years in radio broadcasting. I've had one of the largest events probably in the world as far as promotional events, which was the summer redneck games that people would get shocked if they went and looked at that stuff. But that was a promotion I had come up with and executed, and we had over 10,000 people a year, stuff like that. So I had a lot of experience behind me, but I was not comfortable in front of the camera. I really wasn't. I'm a behind the mic guy. I was on the radio, so being in front of a camera is still difficult to me. It's kind of weird, looking at yourself or somebody
Yeah.
else on the camera. But I've gotten used to it, and so we started developing these new shows under the After Chat, and Bill puts them up on through his After Chat page and OneWrestlingVideo.com. But those videos, the ones we have now, we have the After Chat where he and I get together once a week and pretty much do what you and I are doing
Hmm.
right now. Just kind of discussing the latest hot topics and other things that kind of come up, just kind of, free for all. and we have a really good time with that. I also host Road Trip, which is these shorter interview type of videos with just various superstars, indies, and major stars that we, and even a lot of the past stars,
Yeah.
Magnum TA, people like that. My heroes when I grew up. But so I've got those shows. Then we also have 30-minute time limit, which is a brand new show, which will be about, you'll see about, well, the plan was 3 or 4 a year because they're long length interviews. But unfortunately, right now, getting content in the places I was going to get that content have been canceled. So,
yeah,
when the next 30-minute time limit comes up is as soon as I can get another interview safely so that everybody's comfortable. And then we have a new show, which is Promo Time. And Promo Time is going to be everyone's chance. It always says, I can cut a better promo than that son of a gun. Let's see what you can do, because it's going to give an open forum to everybody to perform 2 minutes or less and send them in. You can send those in to wrestlingpromotime@gmail.com. Get those in, because right now, in fact, just before we went on together, just here, I was talking with a particular individual about making of the grand prize, which will be a title belt, and it's going to be a beautiful title belt. So you're going to want to be a part of this competition. It will last, we hope, depending upon the entries, either once a month or once a week. If the entries come in good, we'll run it once a week. Otherwise, it'll be once a month program. And I've already seen a few of them. Some of them are hilarious. Some of them are straightforward, looking down the camera, ready to kill you. So, just a matter of what you want to put out there. We take them all, but we just ask you keep the profanity to a minimum, because, we would like this to be something that a lot of people can watch. And right now, being locked in as we are during the quarantine that's going on, I'm not sure when this will air, but during this quarantine time, perfect time to open up the camera, have a little bit of fun, get stupid, and just let's all get together and just, relax a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely love 30-minute time limit. I know that the last one that I saw was with Dave LaGreca, Busted Open Radio. That man, I listen to that show as much as I can. I mean, what was it like sitting down and talking to him about the business? I mean, because he has been in the game for a couple of years. He's got a highly popular radio show. I mean, how was it talking to him?
You'll understand this because you know the type of businesses I've been in, and I know what you've been in. I've interviewed a lot of wrestling people, wrestlers themselves, whether they're managers or superstars. They never really unnerved me too much because I've known so many of them over the years. It just doesn't bother me. Getting to interview Dave LaGreca was nerve-wracking as hell. I'm not going to lie. Because first of all, I'm looking at him as he's a radio professional on Sirius XM.
Yeah.
I'm a radio guy. And so now I know he may be judging me on my interview skills, how I'm, your mind just starts taking over. You're not sure what he's thinking. And when it was all over with, it was nothing like that. It was sitting down just like you and I, talking like two friends, just having a chat, talking about wrestling. So he made it really easy, but he was really interesting. His story, if you haven't seen that particular episode that you're talking about of 30-minute time limit with Dave LaGreca, it's really an inside look at Dave LaGreca and the show Busted Open. It's really, and not because I was there, but because I think his content was so good and so interesting, it would hold your attention for the full 45 minutes. The show actually, let me mention this. The show was about 45 minutes long. The reason for that is it was the first show and there was so much good stuff. I didn't want to cut it out.
Yeah.
I didn't see anything to cut. So you saw every bit of that entire interview is sitting right there in front of you.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things you call it 30-minute time limit, but if it goes longer than 30 minutes, you don't want to cut off, a guy like him or, anybody else that you wrestle. I mean, I asked you this off camera. I said, tell me the story of how you met Bill. I mean, Bill, if you have not met Bill, he's he's a great guy, but he is different. I mean, at least in my eyes. I mean, everybody's different, but how did you come to meet Bill?
I will have to go back probably 30 years. Now, not that we knew each other 30 years ago. And this is the story I'm getting to. He came up on the print and photography side. of the wrestling business, going to the shows and covering them, I worked in radio, and I made a friendship with a guy way back in the main one in WCW when I really was getting a lot of inside, stuff. I went through Chip Burnham. He's passed away now, but Chip was a super guy with the Superstation, and he kind of worked with Turner up there. And he and Dusty always made sure that we were flooded with T-shirts, hats, anything I needed to give away. If I ever needed something, they would get it for me. Dusty, actually, a little side story, and I know I'm hopping around, but Dusty and we went through a problem with a bill here. I think it was Bill 558 or something like that many years ago, which basically would have shut down independent wrestling.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Because of what they wanted to do as far as, the license fees and the other things. And I called Dusty and said, Dusty, have you heard about this? And you got to remember, during this time, I think he may have had Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling still at that time. So there's a lot, it could affect him in a great deal. And when I told him what was going on, he said, Dusty does, I'll call you back. And he called me back and said, here, call this number and they'll handle things. And I called the number, not knowing where I was calling. And it ended up being WWE headquarters and Linda McMahon. Huh. So I mean, that's like quick high, business from Dusty. He just threw that number and her right at me. And from that point forward, the WWE paid for the anything that needed to be done to fight that. They even had their lawyer get involved in Atlanta, who I met at the Capitol, and we went in there and tried to say our piece and left. And I think Bill Behrens was involved. I think there were a lot of people coming from different angles during this, but I remembered that of Dusty. And you asked me about really my early childhood memories, about the NWA and Mid-Atlantic. How can you not remember Dusty Rhodes? Dusty, to me, was one of those John Wayne wrestlers that he didn't have to look good. He didn't have to have the perfect body and the big muscles. He had everything sitting inside of his chest and his heart, and the people could feel that. And much like his son Cody today, in a different kind of way, he sounds like Dusty to me.
Yeah, I mean, and speaking of Cody, I mean, he's got AEW, which is on fire. It's dynamite, as Dusty would say. They're having the shows. In your opinion, is their weekly shows better than the WWE shows now that have just no fans? They don't have any pyro. They just have the jumbotron. But they're trying. Matt Hardy is now, in AEW. We have Brody Lee. The former WWE superstars. I mean, do you think that's a big get for them, getting them from the WWE?
I think it is if they come in and perform and perform like they should and not just be there because of their name. That's the only thing that I will say of anybody who comes over from WWE. If they come over with the attitude they want to work and perform just like anyone else, not be a prima donna, come in there and be a part of a team, I think that it's a great move. Anytime they can get someone like that. Question is, how many of those are out there?
I'm sure there are. I mean, sure there are a lot out there, but yeah, I mean, they have, their show on Wednesday, and it's just, I think it's a great promotion. But got a question: of all the interviews that you've done throughout your radio, doing the wrestling stuff and the interviews, who has been your favorite, and who would you say you maybe should have passed on?
Who? That's a good question. My favorite's pretty easy. Wolfman Jack would have been the one. I met Wolfman by accident. I was working in radio in Savannah at a station called Wave 97. It's been a long time ago, but they had a show called Lunchtime Memories. And I was on the show and spinning the oldies. Back then, we actually had turntables still. So, I'm doing all that, and I'm doing Wolfman Jack impersonations in between the oldies, kind of like what he used to do. And I was just goofing around. I don't know if it was a particular song that kind of made me do that or what. But it just so happens that Wolfman Jack was passing through Savannah and listening to our station and heard it. And called me up and said, this basically we're going to come in and we're going to do an interview and we're going to work together and, request oldies show. So I got to actually do about, I want to say 45 minutes to an hour or so with him alone doing oldies requests. And that's something I never thought would happen.
Yeah.
As far as an interview that I wish I didn't have, I don't know that there is one. I don't think I've ever regretted any interview because I've always tried to approach all interviews. Anything I do really just is just upfront, blunt, honest, and if it works, it works. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. That's sometimes it's on me. Sometimes it's on the person I'm interviewing.
Yeah. I mean, I think going to these conventions, I wish the conventions were still up right now, with everybody not being able to travel. I mean, it hurts the business. And when we were at WrestleCon, I remember meeting Virgil, and that was an interesting meet. He is I'm sure you've had a run-in with him and you've met him. He can be difficult, and he was just looking.
That's for sure.
I mean, he's one of those people that I think that may not be the way he is, but I think he's living the gimmick. It's just like I've heard MJF is living the gimmick because he is a quote-unquote total asshole off the screen and on the screen, and he's living the gimmick. But Virgil, I met him. I said, "Hey, you want to be on the show?" And he goes, "Yeah." "You got David Beckham money?" I'm like, "No, I don't have David Beckham money to pay you to be on the show." And he was trying to find a table to sit at, and I'd run into him before at WrestleMania 30. We were in New Orleans, and he was sitting at the craps table at the casino in I think it was Harrah's in New Orleans by himself. And it's just, I think he's just one of those guys that he's giving the fans what they expect, and I think he's just living the dream and living the gimmick.
If he's working everybody, he's doing a hell of a job.
Yeah. If he's not like that for real, and then he's definitely pulling the wool over everybody's shoulders. But but the one other question I wanted, a couple other questions, but kind of circling back to getting into wrestling. How did you get into wrestling? I mean, training, I know we talked about that, but like the first promotion you worked for, I mean, how did you get into this sport? I mean, I know you watched as a kid and then got into it later on in life. How did you do that?
I got into it by accident. As much as I love wrestling and even at that point I was going behind the scenes, I knew a lot of the guys in the back. And I just made a point, I think back then, to just blend in. That was the thing when Bill and I met. We kind of tried to blend in so you don't get in the way. Because back then they protected that area very, very hard. You couldn't get anywhere near the back. And so they had to trust you. What was the question again? I'm sorry. I know you asked me something different than that.
How you got into it. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I got started by accident. We were doing a promotion for the radio station I was working for at the time. There was a flag football game between the two police department and sheriff's department. And they wanted a halftime show, something to entertain the fans. And we said, well, we'll just have a wrestling match. I was involved in that wrestling match, and it was just really the ring that we set up was like a wrestling mat on the ground, maybe some garbage cans, put some rope around. I mean, it was nothing special, but it got the point across. And there was a promoter in the stands that came and found me after the show and asked me if I had ever considered wrestling. And I was like, well, yeah, but, he said, well, why don't you come down and just try, take a bump or two in the ring. Let me, let's go from there. That's pretty much how it happened. I ended up getting in. And when I did get in, and the reason I had to train while on the job was because when I first started, my very first match, which was meant just for me to get in there, just kind of learn my way around the ring, really, and kind of get a feel with the fans being out there and everything. That first match, the fans went nuts and didn't have a choice. They were pushing me to be in a main event. I got in the main event a long time before I should have been there, solely because the fans wanted me to make it. It's like they were watching me grow. I think, that was part of the whole thing. They got to see it from start, to finish when I actually had a big cage event against a guy named Richie Wires, or Platinum Playboy. And that was my first big match. It was the first time and only time I can think of where all the guys in the back made it into the stands to watch the match that we were doing. So, when you got the boys in the back coming out to watch your match and sitting in the stands and, kind of mingling among all the fans that maybe something big is going to happen. Part of it may be they were waiting for a train wreck.
Yeah.
So but the place just went crazy. It was the best feeling I've ever had of any match when that match ended at Rage in the Cage. It was just an incredible. You could feel the fans. The fans felt every bit like they won that match as much as I did. And you could feel that in the building. It's an electrical charge I can't explain. I've never felt that again. I've come close, but never like that. That was just something else. I think that's one of those once in a lifetime type of moments you get. And even though it may have only been 300-400 people, whatever it was that was inside that particular center, every one of them was just going crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that you can't really explain to people. They just have to kind of learn it. They have to see it for themselves. I mean, they have to see independent wrestling. But one final question: if people wanted to get in touch with you on social media to use you for your job, for what or to book you on an event, maybe to MC something, because I know you do a lot of that. How can they get in touch with you?
You can find me on social media at Mad Mac Davis. There's contacts all over the place. Also, a good chance for you to see some of the stuff we're talking about now and some of the videos, and it has links to get to where you need to go to see some of those. It's all free. It's not going to cost you a nickel. But if you want to spend money, you can go to Pro Wrestling Tees and find me over there as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's I mean, and at this point in time, I mean, hey, support Mac, support independent wrestlers. They need it right now. I mean, they need some extra cash that they're not going to get each and every week. But Mac Davis,
I'm going to let me say this right now. I really, if somebody's going to spend their money on a T-shirt, I'd rather you help a different individual right now. I'm lucky enough to be in a good situation right now where I have not been affected. So if you're going to spend money and I'm going to go buy one of his shirts, I would prefer that you go buy somebody else who could really use that help.
Yeah, I mean, they could definitely use that help. But Mac Davis, thanks for coming on the program. And hey, we'll definitely have to do it again.
Sounds good.
Let me
see you.